Hi, this is Stephen Brower of Renton Valley Community College. This is for Computer Literacy Summer 2017. This is part 3 of the Intro to Excel. So previously, well, we got to this point right here, and that I quickly went and used the cell styles, and I got the format there. Now I just suppose I want to go and I want to put in some kind of a chart. Well, one thing that let me deliberately do something that's not great, and then we can go in, and then I'll undo it, and then we'll go back and then I'll try to do it right. And suppose what I want is to do a pie chart, and I want it just on the totals. And suppose and again, what I'm about to do is wrong. I'm going to highlight just the totals, and I'm going to insert a 3D pie chart. And if you notice, what it does is it just has here 1, 2, 3 for the different pieces of pie. So this way, we see that this is 2, but what is it? Because I didn't highlight the brands associated with these totals, then it didn't, for putting a legend down here, it didn't know what to put for the legend. So let's go and remove that chart. So if I highlight the brands along with the totals, so I use the control key to highlight both. And now if I go and do the same process, whoops, it's a buzzer. Oh, I should have hit pause, I'm sorry. So suppose I go and do the 3D pie now. Because I highlighted the brands over here, we do see, so here, this orange one here is cola, the blue one is burpee, and this other one here is other. Depending on the kind of chart that we're trying to do, we have to be mindful of the data that we select as input to the chart. Now, there is a way to override the data that feeds to a chart. It's just sometimes, like here, see select data, it sometimes just isn't necessarily easy. So this is with the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we ahead of time make sure we know what it is that we want to do, we can then go and select it. We'll just go bring this down to this point right here. Now, some of the stuff that the chapter will go through is some of the formatting on here. And let me just very quickly, let's just change this instead of saying total. Sorry, let me just change this to say first quarter total by brand. Okay. What I want to do is just kind of demonstrate that the data and the chart are linked. So that let's just pretend, we stated the January data wrong. It was really 555 sales that we had. So I just went and I changed the value for burpee. And as soon as I hit enter, we see that the chart, that one changed as well. I'm doing undo. Suppose the cola was supposed to be 555. Now the pie here changes, and suppose I'm just going to do the other for giggles and grins, and then the other one changes. So as these numbers change, the chart will change reflectively given the data that's there. Okay, let's just do some undos. Get back to where we began. So part of one of the things that the chapter is going to go through are different ways in which we can sort of manipulate the chart. Like we actually can have, instead of the legend down here, we actually can have them coming off of the different pies. And the other things that we actually can do, and this is where we have to be careful in terms of the clicks. So, if I click back in here again, the entire thing is highlighted. If I click here one more time, only this piece is highlighted, the other ones aren't. So if I actually go and pull that piece out, then for emphasis, then it can kind of show this is the other related to the other. Anyway, so this is the chart, and I think the book has us go through a bar chart, and here this is a pie chart. Pie. And I just was using just sort of a different example of that. So there's some other formatting that's done in terms of the chapter. What I want to do right now is I just want to do a pause and figure, are there other things that I want to do as addendums here, or do I want to make a part 4 with all the all of the leftovers? Okay, I think I am going to make a part 4 because there's probably a number of things that I didn't talk about. Since there's just one that's sort of like staring me in the face that I want to take care of right now, let me go and talk about, well, 2 things. And one is this thing down here. This is what's known as the sheet tab. And the sheet would be the current sheet that we're working on. And by default, sheet 1 is what it's named. We actually can go and rename it. So I was going to, for giggles and grins here, call it first quarter. If we hit the plus here, we can add an entire sheet. And so, I mean, let's pretend I could come in here and do the second quarter. Let me just, by the way, the reason why this says sheet 4 and not sheet 2 is what you didn't see in the video is, anyway. But if I click back here, so this here, the first quarter, this is the stuff I've been working in, and this one here, sheet 4. And if you notice that the cells here, this is completely empty. A1 doesn't have anything. So like this sheet has its own cell references, so the letters and the numbers, so the letters for the columns and the numbers for the row, and this sheet here has its references. What we'll do in a later video, we'll show how we actually can have formulas that can span the different sheets. The way you can approach this is if you think the entire file that you're in as being sort of like a binder. So imagine a 3-ring binder. And in the 3-ring binder, we have a series of tabs for the different sections of the binder. So then this tab is for one section of the binder. This tab is for another section of the binder. And so at the bottom here, we can just see the tabs. Again, if we think of this as being sort of the side view of the binder, then these would be the different sheets that we have. Okay, so the use of them in formulas, there'll be a later video that does that. I think the last thing I want to do for this video, and whether or not there's going to be a part 4, I have to figure out how many other things I completely missed. So I'll have to rewatch those 3, which will put me to sleep, and then I'll eventually get back and do a part 4. Let me talk about printing. Okay, so one is, here, if I just try to go and actually do a print, and what it'll do by default is, that it may or may not make a difference. And let me just see, is this currently in use? Let me just get to the, it's my shared printer, and let me just make sure I pick it so that at least it knows it's active. It's not a color printer. Okay, anyway, so in the print preview, then this is what, let me just kind of bring it over here a bit, and this is sort of like the preview of how it would look on the page. And so it's one thing that we can just kind of glance at in terms of how things will look. So let me just come back here and go under page layout. So some of the things that we can do under page layout, one thing in terms of grid lines, and let me just go back here to, but some of these things you can get to from on the print layout view. I just want to go back and forth. I'm going to go back and forth. Okay, so the grid lines. Now, I did format that document, or this section here, and because I formatted it, it might, in a sense, be nice and neat. But the grid lines, now, as you notice, it's kind of like for what it perceives as being the data part of the spreadsheet, it will actually put the grid lines there. Sometimes what we can do is, like our first draft, we just make sure the grid lines are on. We can go without putting any formats on, at least go and take a look at our numbers, and then once we're ready to format, then we can go back and put the format on, maybe take the grid lines out. But the grid lines are like by default, they don't appear. I'm sorry, let me back up. So we already saw the rows and columns. We saw the active cells that were there. And when this was not checked, and I went to the print, we did not see those come out. So one thing is the grid lines is something that we can control whether they come out on sorry. Some other things that we can do, and I guess there's different ways to get into it, but well, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. From within this part right here, we actually can go and change things like the width, whether or not it would fit to the page or not. We can force it into like, let's say we have some data that spills a little bit onto a second sheet. We can put it into one page width. I'll have some other videos that will get into a little more detail on that later. And I think my gradebook one is where I'm probably going to show a few more things. Now, there's multiple ways to get into what I'm about to go to, but sometimes if you treat Excel like Word, there's some of the features you can find if you just say, well, how do we do that in Word? So let's say on the page you want to get the headers and footers out. Well, if we treat it like Word, if I go in through Insert, then I actually do see the header and footer button. Now, the view here comes out a little bit different. There was another way to get in here. But what I can do is now, what we have here are, remember in Word that it had in the headers, I don't know if you remember this. If I go and I edit the header, do you remember these tab stops? So if I hit tab, here's the center. If I hit tab, here's the right. And it was a way that I could have had stuff here. I could have had stuff here, and I could have had stuff here. So I don't know if you remember Word had that. Well, Excel actually has them as these little buckets here. Now, there are some buttons. So remember in Word, if we wanted like the file name, we actually could bring up the document info. Well, the file name comes up here. It's sort of like a button that we can put in by default. Let me stick in here the sheet name. And so there's a sheet name in here. One of the things I do like under the footer is I'm going to pick this one, the confidential, the date, and the page. And by the way, the reason there's a little space here, it would be if we put an attribute of sort of the company in front of it, then it would be like the company's confidential. Sorry. But that particular footer one that I picked, this particular one here, I'm sorry, the design, that footer, it was sort of like a canned footer. And so that particular one, and the reason why I'm pointing out this one, when I do my grade books, and I print the grade books and give them to the students, I make sure that this is at the bottom to say it's confidential. And the other thing is I see the date that I actually then had produced that. Okay. So now, I'm sorry. So now if I go back to that print, then at least we can see, so there's the file name, there's the tab, and then here's that sort of a canned thing I put in, which had the confidential, today's date, and the page number. Okay, so I think this is going to finish part 3. I'll regroup and figure out whether I need to do a part 4. I'm going to review my videos, part 1, 2, and 3, and figure out what are the little things that I had missed, and then I'll figure out whether it'll be a part 4 or not. Okay.